Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video we're breaking down Secret Invasion episode 6. The ending of the series is now upon us, and throughout this video we're going to be pointing out the Easter eggs, comic book callbacks, and also giving our thoughts on the series as a whole. There's some good and bad things that the season has done, and I want to give our thoughts on the entire thing and where it sits in the Marvel shows for us. Now last week was a pretty slow burn, with us getting a couple of different plot threads setting things up for this entry. Gaia and Varra threw a funeral for Talos, and unfortunately in the end he didn't get his wish. Even though he sacrificed himself to save the president, we see how come the end the guy just hates Skrulls. Anyway, Gaia and Varra's part of the entry closed out with them having a shootout with Gravik's forces. As for Gravik, he killed Pagan for being a pagan, and we learned what his true plan was. Alongside wanting to start World War III, he was also trying to get something known as the Harvest. Turned out Nick had collected the Avengers' DNA, and if I ever get superpowers, I'm completely fucked. I wouldn't wish anyone having to come in my room and collect my DNA, but to be fair, it is completely full of it. What? Now going back to Avengers Endgame, it kind of recontextualizes Nick's appearance, and while he was at the funeral, he probably had his agents out in the field picking up the samples. Now elsewhere, Sonya had been investigating her own people too, and after ousting her boss as a Skrull, she also discovered the Daltons. Reuniting with Nick, they drove out to get the Harvest, and that should be fully up to speed as we go into episode 6. Looking back at this, it makes sense why they go to this specific location to get this specific eye patch, as it's just about completing the look, and we'll talk about this more as we get further into the breakdown. Now this episode is called Home, which is a central theme of the series. The Skrulls have been promised one by Fury, and in the absence of him securing one, they've decided to make Earth theirs. It also kind of asks what home actually means, and whether it's a building, a place you can feel safe, or the people that make it. Bouncing off the back of last week, we then watch Varra at her home, and she's decided to move out from it. Purple blood lines the walls, and this is of course what indicates if someone is a Skrull or not. In the comics, during the final battle of Secret Invasion, there was no way to actually test whether someone was a Skrull or not, so Black Widow said she was just going to start shooting people, and if they'd bled purple, then she'd know they were a Skrull. She was basically like, whoever I come across, you're getting popped in the leg, and yeah, we'll decide from there exactly whose team you're on. Also, I think it's clever how they've got the guy's face away from us, so they don't really have to show his Skrull mask on. Later at the border, they do it, but hey, you've got to save some money on the budget where you can. Anyway, we catch Fury making a goodbye call to her, which is something we've seen other characters doing in the MCU. Tony Stark did it to Pepper before he flew up into the portal in Avengers, and I was thinking, you know, put some emotion into it, Fury. Now, shock horror, big twist, this is actually Gaia, and rewatching this scene knowing this, it makes a lot more sense. They don't say I love you or talk about anything on an emotional level, and Varra seems surprised that they managed to get out there so quickly. So in hindsight, you know, the coldness you feel here makes a lot of sense, as it's Gaia ringing Varra and not Fury ringing his wife. Now I will be referring to them as Fury because it's going to get confusing otherwise, but yeah, just bear in mind that this is actually Gaia. She still carries the iodide pills though, and as we know in real life, these protect from radiation. However, this is all part of an act, as we learn in episode 1 that Skrulls are actually immune to the radiation reactors give off. Gaia shows that she knows the Skrull tactics inside out, and even uses a decoy car to draw the gods away. They end up using up most of their bullets, and this leaves them distracted, which allows Gaia to then kill them. Oh god, Fury, sorry, I've gone back on my own rules. Either way, I really like the way it started, and she doesn't forget to double tap John Wick style to make sure they're definitely dead. Seeing her heading in, we then cut to London and catch Rhodey Skrull trying to convince President Ritson to fire back at Russia. However, those around him, they're trying to de-escalate the situation, and there's also mention of President Vladimir. This is the first time I think we've actually had a name for the Russian leader in the MCU, and it does sort of build out the rest of the world and characters. Now Rhodey Skrull has to change the story about the attack to make sure that Skrulls are included in it. Talos being there meant the story had to change, and thus they just couldn't pin it all on the Russians. To make matters worse, Russian tanks are also taking a position on the Finland and Ukrainian border. We actually had rumours last year that elements of this series would include Ukraine, with there being a big plot that Russia went against them. However, this ended up being cut due to it being too similar to real life, and I was surprised that they still left this line in. However, she ends up getting manipulated herself, as Sonya then informs her Fury's heading to the hospital. In hindsight, I love how there's these two Furies in play, and yeah, it is nice to have two Super Skrulls facing off against each other, whilst Fury takes the more, the easier one with the normal Rhodey. Out at the reactor site, Fury, or rather Gaia, makes their way in, and they pass by Beeto's body, which was left there by Gravik last week. Lots of other Skrulls have been killed too, and yeah, from Gaia's perspective, you can see how, this makes a bit of a difference. She was the person who, of course, brought him into the reactor, and seeing him dead, it does kind of hit home for her. At this point, Fury... I'm just going to keep calling him Fury because otherwise I'll get confusing. But at this point, Fury enters the reactor coughing like you when you smoke one of your uncle's wacky cigarettes. Gravik reveals that everyone's locked away, and this of course leaves just these two.
Where is everybody? Locked away. Looks like it's just you and me, Fury.
Actually, appreciate that Gravik calls him Fury because we've seen with other Skrulls how they messed up and called him Nick. This is what gave Rhodey away to him, and it shows how Gravik knows him on a personal level. Friends call me Fury, is how the saying goes, and it shows that they've actually had a friendship in the past. Gaia plays the role perfectly, and she ends up dropping the pills, raising the tension, and making us think all's lost. Just jumping back a bit, I also like how she asks about where the other Skrulls are, as she would of course care about what's happened to her friends. Offered a drink, Gravik gives a toast
to the last stand of the great Nick Fury.
But you clearly haven't read the script or even seen the Marvels trailer, which they dropped in advance, giving it away that Fury was gonna be fine.
I'm Nick Fury. Even when I'm out, I'm in.
Now back at the hospital, Rhodey Skrull starts moving out the president as they're paranoid that Fury could reveal the truth. I like how they kinda hide who's taking the gods out, and this makes us focus on Fury being with Gravik. Gravik talks about whose face he took, which Gaia of course doesn't know about. This makes Gravik think it's because Fury doesn't remember, when in fact it's actually because she has no idea who it is. This reflects how Skrulls in the comics could easily get caught out because they didn't take on the memories of those that they were playing. Now I think that the series has shown that the Skrulls can work really well as villains in the MCU. Though the bridges have been mended, I think they should still have the bad Skrulls popping up in the universe. We know that Emperor Droge is out there ruling over the rest of them, and potentially they might end up launching attacks on Earth. In the comics, it was Emperor Doruk who ordered the collection of the hero's DNA, and this somewhat mirrors what happened with the Harvest. Before the events of Secret Invasion, he actually captured the Illuminati and worked out ways to then clone the heroes. This got to the point that they perfectly brought across their memories, and the Reed Richard clones even woke up believing they were him. Eventually, it did get to the point where they realised and went mad because of this, but I hope at least something like this is brought forth with the future of the species. We know that the Skrulls that are on Earth are with the Emperor, and they might see the ones on Earth being persecuted as being a slight on their people. This could lead to a proper Secret Invasion story down the line, though that's probably me just getting wishful thinking. Either way, I think the real Fury would know who Gravik first killed, but Gaia having no idea doesn't tip him off. Turns out Gravik feels guilt over killing the man under Fury's orders, and it shows how he's turned his agents into murderers and assassins. Gravik was pretty much a kid when he came to Earth, and it shows how Fury didn't care about drafting kids into his war. Kingsley Benedict completely kills it in this moment, and the man goes off oozing true anger and rage. Now at this point, Fury, or Gaia, or whatever, says they knew within a few years that there was no home for the Skrulls. Whether this is true or not, I don't really know, though it does come across as being sincere. However, Gaia is of course delivering this, so the speech might not be real, and we'll talk later on about how the Marvels trailer shows Skrulls alongside Carol. Now Gaia, as Fury says, that when she was snapped she felt relief, but we know the real Nick Fury was desperately reaching out to Captain Marvel. He's even saying mother, so yeah, I do kind of take this as being her just making it up. Now at this point she pulls out the Harvest, giving focus to it, and playing up the fact it contains Carol Danvers' DNA. The Harvest itself is actually being described online as the most dangerous weapon on Earth, and though, they do touch upon it, I don't feel like the show fully hammers home that idea. However, it does build off some of the thematic elements that we have seen popping up in phases 4 and 5. The earlier phases came with the idea that the next world war would be fought with superhumans, and though that's an Amanda Waller quote, it's also the case here too. Ever since the creation of Captain America, the US has been trying to reproduce Erskine's experiments to go make super soldiers. This ended up leading to the creation of the Hulk when the experiments went awry, and it's going to be a big focus in Captain America Brave New World. Now these plot threads were further built upon in Civil War, with us learning that the Russians had been running their own super soldier program. If you've seen Oppenheimer, then you'll probably have noticed the similarities between this and the arms race, and it shows a threat of escalation with everyone trying to get their own super soldiers. In both Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we had a US agent being created, and also the Flag Smashers having their super soldier serum too. She-Hulk had the Intelligentsia attempting to make their own Hulks, and there's this idea here that you need to up your army to be able to match the superhumans. The Skrulls didn't originally have superpowers in the comics, but after being beaten by the Fantastic Four, they decided to up their game. This led to them creating experiments to make a Super Skrull, and if Gravik gets these powers, he'll be almost unstoppable. Again, it's this idea of escalation, and how if America or the humans do one thing, then everyone else has to at least match them or better them. They start carrying knives, their villains start carrying guns, they hit the thumbs up button, their villains subscribe. Once the Avengers defeated the Chitauri, Thanos had to get his Outriders, and eventually ended up having to step in himself. What Gravik's doing makes a lot of sense, and that's why the Harvest has become so important. It also retroactively explains how Gravik got the Extremis, Groot DNA, Frost Beasts, and so on. They were probably collected by the Skrulls from the sites that these things were located at, but the Harvest itself's a more refined version with all the heroes who showed up during the Battle of Earth. Thus it's got everyone you'd want, whereas these earlier versions, they don't have that roster. Now Gaia begs Gravik to take the Harvest and leave, which I actually think is her trying to save her people. It's kind of a last chance deal before she reveals the truth, but then Gravik takes it thinking he's leaving Fury to die. Going over to the machine with it, we see lots of names popping up, and I did slow down the footage to see everyone in it. This included Ghost, Captain America, Corvus Glaive, Thanos, an Outrider, Proxima Midnight, Captain Marvel, the Abomination, Mantis, Cull Obsidian, Drax, Korg, Ebony Maw, a Frost Beast, the Chitauri, Black Panther, Valkyrie, Thor, Gamora, Flora Colossus, and the Winter Soldier. Now the play here is of course to allow Gaia to power herself up as well, and we do see later on her demonstrating these abilities. At the hospital, Sonya pulls a gun, sussing out how bad Rhodey is tactically because the Skrull doesn't check behind the doors. With Gravik, we watch as the machine powers up, and it gives the pair the abilities of the Harvest. A huge shout out to the Canadian Vapor guy for pointing out that the machine in the core works and acts like the mutating machine from the original X-Men movie. Even the waves that come out look like how they did in the film, and they alter DNA in the same way to help create mutants. Mutants are slowly coming into the MCU, and if you've seen our videos on Deadpool 3, then you'll know it's going to be in a big way. Now if you want to support the channel and get some merch out of it, then check out our Secret Invasion Inspired Skrull Fiction t-shirt riffing off the Quentin Tarantino classic. We've sourced out the highest quality t-shirts we could find, and these are designed to accentuate and show off your body in a flattering way. They're built up around the upper chest and hang loose around the stomach, so they make you look better than you already do. Chapow! Link is in the description, or head over to shopzeroedition.com to get your hands on one now. Thanks. Now at this point we see Gravik looking Hulk-like, and this may actually hint at something coming down the line. In the comics, Hulkling is actually part Skrull himself, so this might be a stepping stone to how he gets introduced. Now stopping his fist, we watch as Gaia starts to fight back, and this leads to destroying the factory around them. Nice catch is that when Gravik crash lands, he actually has Groot's arm along with his hulkish body. At the hospital, Fury steps forward, and we see Gaia then cycling through the powers. Gravik gets what I think is the Abomination's arm, whilst on the other side of this, we see Gaia gets Drax's. Looks a bit like that bit from Rick and Morty where he's got the one big arm from doing you-know-what, and we see as they go through all the different powers like Korg and the Frost Beast. Kind of devolves into a big CGI fight, which unfortunately I feel has plagued a lot of the Marvel finales. The best one for me has been the ending of Loki, which went with a more cerebral battle using brains rather than brawn. Meanwhile, Ritson does the old, I don't know who to trust, don't know who to shoot, which is when Fury reveals the world leaders are being kept hidden at the factory. The reason the Skrulls wanted to blow it up was because all these VIPs were here, and bringing this down would lead to humanity's downfall. Now from here we cut to see a silo launching up and getting things in place to begin firing missiles. Now this silo design, look, I know that silos look like this in real life, but the design of this specific one looks identical to how it was in Civil War. I think thematically, lacing the entry with iconography like this is to play up the themes that the entire show is sort of its own little Civil War. Fury and the Skrulls were originally on the same side, but after ideologies changed, they ended up turning against each other. Now we do know from the Marvels trailer that everything will be fine and dandy with them again, so on the whole, they'll probably be welcome back. We know there's Skrulls on Saber too, so this is really just a fraction of them that turned against Fury. Now this could also be showing how humanity's turned on itself, but Fury starts to talk Ritson around to his side. All he wants is for him to delay the strike and get his head around stuff before going to war. With Gaia, we see she uses the powers of Captain Marvel before harnessing Mantis to send Gravik to sleep. Crashing into the ground, she eventually blasts a hole through him. That reminded me a bit of when Carol tried to take the Power Stone. Gravik is killed along with the Skrull Rhodey, and for the moment, the big Skrull threat is over. Now Ritson gets on the horn and Gaia frees the trapped humans, including the Daltons and the guy we saw in episode 1. There's also Rhodey alongside Everett Ross, though we don't get it cleared up exactly when they were captured. They say it's a long time, but we don't get dates. However, we can see that he has trouble walking.
And me, I'm 56 years old. Damn! I'm sorry.
He was of course paralysed during Civil War and also had the braces in Avengers Infinity War. These appeared in the opening of Endgame and also at the funeral. However, during Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he didn't have them on. I'm guessing that the brace thing is the biggest clue to this all, and that it's probably just going to be that project, though yeah, we will find out in the future. The PM is freed along with the guy Pagan imitated, and we see as Ritson puts out a call to declare Skrulls as enemy combatants. Now, I will talk about this more in depth later on, and how it's going to lead into something in the future. Either way, from here we cut across to Fury's home, and see him back rocking his classic look. He fled to Saber after the events of Endgame, but he's now returned to Earth to right the wrongs of the past. It's been said he's out of step and behind his opponents, but now he's back in black and ready to protect the planet. Last week he said it was a personal problem, which is why he wouldn't reach out to the Avengers, and he has to be the man to protect Earth. This is something that happened in the comics too, and original sin centered around him finally dying and giving up the mantle. It was a great story, but it also hammered home the idea that Fury has to be the man looking out for us. Now he apologizes for not being there, and Vara talks about how she has to put a mask on whenever he's around. He finally says that he loves her, and he's back to ask for one more chance at love. Now with Gaia, we see she gets tracked down by Sonya and then offered a deal. Gaia actually might be the most powerful person on the planet at this point, and Sonya somewhat wants to draft her into a Cold War. However, Sonya wants to offer the Skrulls a place on Earth, rather than the deal that Talos had with Fury. Makes sense that things would go in this direction, and at this point we see Fury reaches out to the President. Whilst this is going on, we get it interspersed with how many Skrulls there are and how many humans that they discovered. Now this room full of people somewhat riffs off the comics, as the Skrulls kept a group of world leaders sedated whilst they took over their roles. A lot of people are asking why the Skrulls don't out and out kill people, and personally I think it's connected to the memories. They might worry one day that they'll need certain information and this won't be accessible if the target's dead. For example, it could be the nuke codes or even personal info that they need to know to not arouse suspicion. In episode 3 we saw how Talos called Gaia to get her to read Bob Fairbank's mind, and this may be something that Gravik's forces also have to do too. Now the bodies here are covered in a sort of plasticky fabric seal or something that looks like skin, and to me this has been done for a specific reason. Invasion of the Body Snatchers had people being put into pods, and the aliens then duplicated and copied them exactly. Discovering these identities has led to hit squads going out and assassinating all the members of the Skrull Council. This has obviously led to things escalating further, and it has inspired lots of different vigilantes. Innocents have obviously been caught in the crossfire, with people who aren't Skrulls being shot themselves. Ritson has declared war though and refuses to back down, and I'm going to reach here for a second, but look at the driver. Don't know if it's a light or what, but either way it's shot to give this guy a green and purple looking face. As we know, these are the colours of the Skrulls, perhaps hinting that they're closer than he thinks. Fury also taunts him as being a one-term president, which obvious political commentary reflecting our world there. Anyway, Fury goes back to the ship, but Vara returns in a sort of reverse E.T. moment. The alien is watching the human leave the planet, but she finally shows her true face, giving us a tender moment. She's decided to use her true name, and we learn that the Kree are also open to peace talks. Vara is unsure on whether it's going to go well, but Fury wants her to join him at the Peace Summit. Now, according to the leaks on the Marvels, this will actually feature in the film, but yeah, whether that's the case, we'll just have to wait and see. Vara shows her true face, and the pair say that they love each other, which I'm not crying, mate. You're crying. Now, he promises she'll never have to hide her face again, but mate, he could be with Cameron Diaz in The Mask, you know what I'm saying? God damn, she got good parts of it too, god damn. Now, as for where the MCU is going to go from here, we actually have a pretty fair idea due to Marvel spoiling all their upcoming films. No idea why they released the Marvels trailer last week, but I'm guessing that from now on, Fury's going to operate primarily out of Saber. This is the satellite that protects the Earth from extraterrestrial threats, and it makes sense that it's located right next to a hex point. You can catch this up in the top left, and it's going to have Fury keeping his eye on what's happening out in space. Now, we also know that Armor Wars is on the way too, with Rhodey being the main character in that. I think that's going to fill in a lot of questions people have, like exactly when he was swapped out. Kevin Feige's actually said that Rhodey was a Skrull during other projects, so hopefully we'll get the ins and outs of exactly when that was. Now, Armor Wars will probably build off the back of the Power Broker reveal in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Guessing lots of Iron Man suits will be contested for, and that will be the main thrust of that film. Elsewhere, we have the events of this show, also leading into Captain America Brave New World. By the time that film rolls around, General Ross will be the president, with the events of this show clearly affecting Ritson's run. This somewhat mirrors the comics, as in those Tony Stark took over as the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the wake of Civil War. However, his leadership was seen as a liability after the Skrulls infiltrated all aspects of his life. They posed as Jarvis, released a virus that sabotaged his tech, and brought down every aspect of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, it was actually Norman Osborn that ended up taking down the Skrulls, and because of this he was appointed as the new leader. He brought in the Dark Avengers at this point, which is a similar arc to what I can see Ross going through. I think once he gets to the point of being the president, he'll start the Thunderbolts program, which will then lead us directly into the Thunderbolts movie. Now lastly, we have the Marvels, which is going to be the next MCU film released. From the trailer, we have an idea of what happened when Carol went out looking for a new home for the Skrulls, and we now know that she returned back to Hala. Yes, she destroyed the Supreme Intelligence, and the people from the planet now call her the Annihilator. We have done a full video breaking down the entire trailer for that, so I don't want to just repeat it, but Skrulls will be making an appearance in the movie alongside Carol. So they'll probably touch upon what the plan is next, and we might build off the back of this season to finally get the Skrulls a new home. Now, as for my thoughts on the season as a whole, I think this unfortunately missed its full potential, and though it was solid, it didn't end up hitting the great heights that I feel it could have. I feel this is a problem that's plagued Disney Plus shows across the board, and it's something Bob Iger has even admitted himself. I don't know if it's the 6-episode format that holds things back, but it feels like by the time we finally get things going, it's time to wind it down. We now know that Daredevil Born Again will be split into 2 parts, with us getting 2 9-episode arcs and a break in between. I think that's probably a better format, because I just don't think these short limited series are allowing the creative teams to excel. When I think of Secret Invasion, I think of a big threat where all the heroes are constantly questioning what's going on and who they can really trust. The series started off with those themes, but once the characters started dropping off, it became pretty obvious how things were going to go. Been thinking about this in the week, and I think the movie The Thing should have been the archetype for what they ended up doing in this show. Like the series, that has a small cast and also a villain that can perfectly mimic people. However, that's laced with a constant feeling of paranoia because you don't really know who could be the Thing. This series kinda started out like that too, and the Everett Ross reveal was something that completely caught me off guard. I think that after the death of Maria though, that all the potential Skrull candidates became pretty obvious. Rhodey was the only Avenger there could be, and them having the reveal over the phone instead of through a character robbed us of their reactions. When you read the comics, you have this constant feel of surprise, and you don't really know who to trust, but that just didn't feel like it was apparent here. Though we were talking about it being an event that could set off World War III, you also didn't really get that feeling, and it just boiled down to a bad guy trying to gain more power. And this is a shame because when the show soars, it really soars. There's some brilliant acting in this series, and I think all of the strongest moments happened when it was just 2 characters going back and forth. Samuel L. Jackson knocked it out of the park, and we had some brilliant moments with him going against Ben Mendelsohn, Kobe Smulders, and Charlene Woodard. This was my favourite performance from him as Nick, and I thought Olivia Colman really shined too. She completely killed it and gleefully ate up all the scenes that she was in as well. Emilia Clarke, as always, handled things brilliantly, and she brought strength and vulnerability, which is what made her portrayal of Daenerys so good in the first place. I just don't think she was given enough to work with, and that's the same with Kingsley Benadier. The first 3 episodes of the series had him being a twisted and complex villain that, on some levels, you could at least relate to. He was intimidating, but his plan to take things for himself was something you could see actually proving to be a pretty dangerous threat. However, by the latter part of the seasons, he just became a bit stereotypical and he lost a lot of the nuance that he had early on. So yeah, there's some good stuff here, but a lot feels like half-formed ideas that they had to cram into this 6-episode thing. I know I'll probably sound like I'm overly bashing it, as I did enjoy it, but I just expected more twists, more paranoia, and something that felt like it was going to destroy the Marvel Universe rather than being a nuisance. Now saying that, I think it's still probably one of the stronger MCU shows, and so far my ranking goes Loki number 1, WandaVision 2, then probably Moon Knight and Secret Invasion tied alongside Ms. Marvel in 3rd place. Those could really swap numbers depending on what day you ask me, and after that I'd have Falcon and the Winter Soldier following. Hawkeye's kinda in the same league for me, What If after that, and She-Hulk being my least favourite out of them. Now I don't know what the formats of the shows is going to be going forward, because Echo's getting released in one day, which has sparked conversations that it's because the series is pretty meh. We also have the Agatha series coming out, and Ironheart as well, along with Loki Season 2, and of course Daredevil. Now there is talk that these shows are damaging the brand, and yeah, I think when they're just okay, it does hurt people's interest in Marvel. It just seems like we're teasing endless sequels, and rather than going anywhere, it's about the next project and what's to come down the line. I'm being a bit of a negative Nancy, but I'm just being realistic and giving both the positives of the show and what I feel could have been stronger. I come across like I thought was terrible, and I want to make sure that I didn't think that. I did enjoy parts of it. But yeah, this whole thing just fell short of hitting that absolutely amazing level. Now, I will turn that over to you because it is just my opinion. What did you think on the series, and do you think these shows are killing the brand, if at all? Comment below and let me know, and if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society, then please click the join button, as we really appreciate it. You get early access to videos every single week, and it goes such a long way to helping us all out. Now if you want something else to watch, we've got a breakdown of the Marvels trailer, which will be linked on screen right now. Please head over there if you want to hear more of our thoughts on where Secret Invasion could go, and how it picks up in the movie, and yeah, just what's happening with Carol. By the way, huge thank you for clicking this. I've been Paul, hope you've enjoyed the coverage, and yeah, I'll see you next time. You take care of yourself, mate. Thank you, much love, peace.